beautiful. Tanwa was born into a small town nestled amidst the lush green hills of the African continent. Her mother passed away when she was just 10 years old, but she left her with a legacy of a love and trust in God. An only child to her mother, she had to navigate the complexities of life with her heartbroken father who remarried 2 years later. Her stepmother, a woman with a heart seemingly as cold as the winter's wind, saw Tanwa as a burden. She therefore gave her a hard time, forcing her to do most of the housework while her own 2 older daughters lazed around. Tanwa was treated like Cinderella, while her father could do nothing about it, but rather turned the other eye. He, however, always made sure she went to church, a place she really loved. On the other hand, his wife and stepdaughters loved to shop and shop and shop, which made him sad. Tanwa's dream was to become a doctor, a healer to care for her people and stop the early scourge that took many as well as her mom. School was her respite from the pressures at home, and she studied hard. At 16, she was admitted to the university, excelling in her medical school classes, her brilliance and determination shining brighter than the midday sun. She now had the freedom of living on campus and being actively involved in lively social activities. She was an influential prayer and music leader in the school Christian group. However, her aspirations were cut short with the harsh complications of life. Their landlord was a wealthy businessman friend of her dad's who also lived nearby. Tanwa's dad also worked as director of one of his companies. This man, known as Chief Wali, had come to live in the town from a different tribe. He loved women a lot and had often joked about admiring and wanting Tanwa. Behind her husband's back, Tanwa's stepmom had taken a large bribe from this chief, promising to secure his catch. Tanwa avoided him like the plague anytime he came to their house. With a lot of sweet talk and pressure from his wife, Tanwa's dad agreed to consider his offer. The businessman, Chief Wali, a man of considerable means and influence, already had several wives and countless children. He accepted the deal. The prospect of becoming his next wife filled Tanwa with dread. When she came home on break, before her final year of college, her father told her she must marry Chief Wali or he'll lose his job and house. The day of the betrothal ceremony arrived. A somber air seemed to weigh heavily on the gathered community. The businessman with his small entourage of friends and family were seated opposite Tanwa's father and stepmother. Tanwa, dressed in traditional attire, stood before some family elders, her heart heavy with sorrow. As the elders chanted ancient blessings, she felt a sense of despair wash over her. She yearned for freedom, for the chance to pursue her dreams without the constraints of tradition. Just as the elders were about to hand her over to the other side, a commotion erupted in the crowd. An angry group of young men and women from Tanwa's church burst into the ceremony, their faces etched with anger. They accused the businessman of taking advantage of their people and demanded that Tanwa be released. Chief Wali, realizing that he had underestimated the strength of the youth, reluctantly backed down, faking a smile. He turned to Tanwa's dad with a stern look and stormed out of the gathering. Tanwa's stepmom ran after him, seemingly to pacify him, but told him not to worry. We'll find another way. He determined that moment that he would kidnap her. As Tanwa was escorted back home by her friends, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. As soon as she was alone in her room, she knelt down to thank God for her deliverance. She had narrowly escaped a fate that would have forever altered her life. However, she knew that her troubles were far from over. Her stepmother, still resentful of Tanwa's presence, was very upset. She and her daughters vowed to find another way to get rid of her. Thinking about the unease that prevailed in their home and the look in the chief's eyes, Tanwa decided to leave the environment as soon as possible. She coaxed her final year school fees from her dad, who was secretly glad that she escaped the marriage deal. She packed a small bag and, one day under the cover of darkness, she slipped away from the village. She knew she had to leave, to find a place where she could pursue her dreams without the lingering fear of a forced marriage. It was nearly time to return to school. Tanwa's dangerous journey. Tanwa, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope, fled to her aunt's home in the bustling metropolis. Her aunt, a woman of strength and resilience, welcomed her with open arms. Recognizing the danger of Tanwa's situation, they discussed the need to find a safer place for her to stay. With the help of a wealthy lady friend, her aunt managed to secure a room for Tanwa in a secluded part of the city. However, this seemingly safe haven was a facade. Unbeknownst to her aunt, the friend was a trafficker of young girls, preying on vulnerable individuals like Tanwa. Tanwa, unaware of the terrible risk, settled into her new surroundings. She spent her days studying tirelessly, her dream of becoming a doctor fueling her determination. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to sense an unsettling atmosphere. The house was always visited by strange men, their eyes lingering, seemingly with a predatory glint. One evening, as Tanwa was preparing for bed, she heard a commotion downstairs. She crept closer to the door, her heart pounding in her chest. Through a crack in the door, she witnessed a group of 3 men discussing about a young girl who had just arrived. Their words were dirty and chilling, interspersed with money betting for the first taste of her innocence. Realizing the horrifying truth, Tanwa knew she had to escape. Without a moment's hesitation, she grabbed her belongings and tried to slip out of the house without telling anyone. As she tiptoed to the door, the 3 men turned in surprise. She fled into the night. She felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had no idea where she was going or what awaited her, but she knew she couldn't stay. Down the road was a church. She ran into the open doors and sat down with a few occupants. Soon the program would be over. Tanwa's new beginning. She knew she couldn't stay there for long, fearful that the traffickers might have started looking for her. Her only hope was to reach her college, where she could seek help from her friends. Tanwa called one of her school friends, a kind and compassionate girl named Maya. On hearing Tanwa's desperate plea, she immediately agreed to pick her up. With a mixture of relief and anxiety, Tanwa went to the church gate to wait for Maya's arrival. As the minutes ticked by, Tanwa's nerves grew. She feared that the traffickers might soon find her, and that Maya's arrival could put them both in danger. Just as she was about to give up hope, she heard the sound of a car approaching. Maya had arrived. With tears streaming down her face, Tanwa ran towards Maya's car, throwing herself into her friend's arms. Maya, overwhelmed with emotion, held Tanwa tightly, offering her comfort and support. As they drove away from the church, Tanwa felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had finally escaped the clutches of the traffickers, and she was now safe with her friend. Tanwa's courage. Tanwa, exhausted and emotionally drained, curled up in Maya's bed trying to sleep. The events of the past few days had taken a toll on her, and she struggled to process everything that had happened. Maya, ever the optimist, tried to cheer Tanwa up, telling her that they would find a way to get through this. But Tanwa couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her heart. She feared that the traffickers would come after her, and that she would never be able to live a normal life again. She took solace in singing and reading her Bible. A few days later, Priska, Maya's roommate, returned from her law internship. Upon hearing Tanwa's story, Priska's face contorted with anger. She insisted that they go to the police and report the traffickers. Tanwa, terrified of the consequences, hesitated. She had never interacted with the police before, and she feared that they might not believe her. Maya, seeing Tanwa's hesitation, gently encouraged her. "We can't let them get away with this," Maya said, her voice filled with determination. "You deserve justice, Tanwa, and those girls need to be rescued." With Maya and Priska's support, Tanwa finally agreed to do something about the case. The next morning, the 3 of them marched into the office of Priska's departmental head, their faces etched with determination. They laid out their story, their voices trembling with emotion. The departmental head, a stern-looking woman named Professor Thompson, listened intently to their tale. When they had finished, she nodded thoughtfully. "This is a serious matter," she said. "I will do everything in my power to help you." Professor Thompson immediately contacted the local police, who agreed to investigate the case. As Tanwa, Maya, and Priska left the professor's office, they felt a sense of hope. They had taken the first step towards justice, and they were determined to see it through to the end, hopeful that the police would take their case seriously.
A twist of fate. The city's chief security officer, Captain Akin, took the information seriously and was eager to investigate. He had heard rumors about a new group of traffickers operating in his jurisdiction, preying on vulnerable young women. He was determined to put an end to their illicit activities. Captain Akin, intrigued by the case, immediately dispatched a team of detectives to the college. He also personally visited the university, met Professor Thompson and requested audience with the complainants. Tanwa, Maya, and Priska returned to their dorm, busy discussing their thoughts of what might happen next. They knew that the road ahead would be complicated, but they were determined to see justice served. A shocking turn of events. Tanwa, Maya, and Priska had barely settled into their dorm room to rest when their plans were disrupted. Priska received a call from her head of department, informing her that the police chief and his men were waiting to interview Tanwa. The news was both terrifying and exciting. Tanwa's heart pounded in her chest as she followed Maya and Priska to the designated meeting place. When they arrived, they were greeted by a group of 3 stern-looking policemen. They escorted Tanwa to a private room, where they began to question her about the incident. Tanwa, still reeling from the events of the past few days, recounted her ordeal in detail. The policemen listened intently, their faces etched with concern. The chief of police shook hands with them and reassured them that all will be over soon. Meanwhile, a team of detectives was dispatched to the den, the location where Tanwa had been held captive. The area was cordoned off, and forensic experts combed the scene for evidence. The trafficking madam, under whose name the den was registered, was immediately arrested. Her home was searched, and numerous incriminating pieces of evidence were seized. The police had finally caught up with the criminals, and Tanwa and her friends felt a surge of hope. As the day wore on, Tanwa, Maya, and Priska found themselves caught up in a whirlwind of activity. They were interviewed by journalists, and their story was splashed across the front pages of newspapers. The public was outraged by the horrific crimes that had been committed, and there was a growing demand for justice. Tanwa, despite the trauma she had endured, felt a sense of purpose. She knew that her ordeal was not in vain, and that her story would help to raise awareness about the dangers of human trafficking. She was determined to use her voice to advocate for the victims of this heinous crime. A shocking revelation. Tanwa, Maya, and Priska found themselves at the heart of a major police investigation. At the police station, Tanwa and 2 other girls who had been rescued from the trafficking den were brought in as witnesses. The trafficking madam, under interrogation, finally admitted to her crimes. However, she revealed a shocking twist: she was not the kingpin. The mastermind behind the operation was a wealthy businessman who lived a seemingly respectable life in the suburbs. When the madam uttered his name, the room fell silent. Tanwa was the most stunned of all. The man she had been betrothed to a year earlier, the man who had tried to force her into a loveless marriage, Chief Wali, was the one responsible for the horrific crimes that had been committed. The revelation was a bitter pill to swallow. Tanwa had spent months struggling to escape the possibility of a forced marriage and a difficult home, only to discover that the man she had feared the most was the one pulling the strings of destruction of young minds. The police immediately dispatched emissaries to the businessman's home. Incidentally, he was at his city home, a sprawling edifice. As the news of Chief Whale's arrest spread, the city was gripped by a wave of shock and disbelief. No one could have imagined that such a seemingly respectable man was capable of such evil deeds. Tanwa, Maya, and Priska watched with a mixture of horror and satisfaction as the police officers apprehended the businessmen. They knew that justice was finally being served, but they also realized that their ordeal was far from over. The trial would be a long and arduous process, and there was no guarantee that the businessmen would be found guilty. As the days turned into weeks, Tanwa, Maya, and Priska found themselves caught up in a media frenzy. Their story had captured the nation's attention, and they were inundated with offers of support. Despite the challenges they faced, Tanwa and her friends remained determined. Tanwa's triumph. Tanwa's aunt, upon hearing the news of her niece's ordeal and the subsequent arrest of the trafficking kingpins, had come to find her, overcome with emotion. She embraced Tanwa tightly, tears streaming down her face as she thanked God for her niece's safety. They both knelt down and prayed in thanksgiving to God. Tanwa's father and stepmother, and her 2 step-sisters, however, remained distant. Their neighbors, appalled by their behavior, ostracized them, leaving them feeling isolated and alone. At school, Tanwa, Maya, and Priska became instant celebrities. Their story had captured the nation's imagination, and they were inundated with media requests. Despite the attention, the girls remained grounded, focusing on their studies and preparing for their final exams. The trafficking matter led to the arrest of several other men involved in the illicit trade. The region had been cleansed of the scourge of human trafficking, thanks to Tanwa's bravery and the tireless efforts of the police. The culprits all faced the full vent of the law. As Tanwa, Maya, and Priska prepared to graduate, they looked forward to a brighter future. Tanwa had made a vow to never return to her hometown, a place that held too many painful memories. She was determined to build a new life for herself, one that was free from fear and uncertainty. A new beginning. As the final exams approached, Tanwa and her study group threw themselves into their preparations. Tanwa was the only female student in the group, but she held her own, impressing her male counterparts with her intelligence and dedication. One particular lecturer, Dr. Moth, took a special interest in Tanwa. A young and charismatic man, Dr. Moth was known for his rigorous teaching style and his commitment to his students' success. He organized practice sessions to prepare the students for the external exams, pushing them to their limits. He was still single, so he could spend long hours with them. Tanwa found herself particularly drawn to Dr. Moth. His enthusiasm and passion for his subject were infectious, and he seemed genuinely invested in her success. He offered her extra guidance and support, helping her to overcome her fears and build her confidence. When the exam results were released, Tanwa and her study group were thrilled to learn that they had all passed with flying colors. Maya, Tanwa's close friend, was particularly elated at passing, as she had struggled with some of the coursework and practicals. To celebrate their success, Dr. Moth hosted a party for all the students. At the party, Tanwa found herself drawn to Dr. Moth. He was charming and witty, and he seemed to make her feel special. As the night wore on, they spent more and more time together, talking and laughing. By the end of the evening, it was clear that Dr. Moth had developed feelings for Tanwa. He was gentle and considerate, and he seemed to understand her fears and insecurities. Tanwa, in turn, was attracted to his intelligence, his passion, and his kindness. As the party drew to a close, Dr. Moth asked Tanwa to join him for a drink. As they sat together, talking late into the night, Tanwa felt a sense of peace and contentment. She knew that her life was about to take a new and exciting turn. A happy ending. Tanwa and Dr. Moth continued to see each other after the party. They both took their Christian faith seriously, and Tanwa joined Dr. Moth's church, so they often attended programs together. Their relationship blossomed, filled with laughter, love, and mutual respect. Dr. Moth was the perfect partner for Tanwa, offering her the support and encouragement she needed to overcome her past. With her sweet nature and natural beauty, he was always proud to have her by his side. Tanwa's life had taken a remarkable turn. She had escaped the clutches of human traffickers, found true friendship, and discovered love. Her journey had been filled with challenges, but she had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. As Tanwa and Dr. Moth looked to the future, they were filled with hope and excitement. They were planning to get married and start a family, and they were eager to build a life together. Tanwa knew that she had finally found the happiness she had always dreamed of. This story is a testament to the power of human resilience and the importance of friendship and support. Tanwa's journey was filled with challenges, but she never gave up on her dreams. Her courage and determination ultimately led her to a happy ending.